Friends, let's discuss on Sunday, 31st of May. Today we're going to be talking about a whole host of issues, not least because we missed last week, friends. So we apologize
That's
for
on
our
me.
vacation. No, it's
Yeah,
fine.
it's
It's
on me.
all good. Center Parks needed you. You needed Center Parks. So it's all good. So yeah, welcome, Fabs. How has your week or two been?
Yeah, it's weird taking like 1 week off shouldn't feel like a long time, but like that whole period, I was like, I got all these thoughts that I haven't been able to get out, and now I feel like my brain's overloaded, and so this may be like a garbled spew of thoughts coming from my mouth over the next hour or however long we record for. But yeah, I'm glad to be back. Center Parks is a wild place. Like every time I go down, I'm like, why are we doing this?
I
Like,
don't know.
like I'm balancing the fact that like clearly my daughter does have a good time versus when my daughter says like a couple Saturdays ago we just spent the whole day at home and she completely unprompted said this is the best day ever, and I was like, so why are we going on holiday? Like, why are we spending money going away? Why am I packing up the car to
Like,
the point where nothing else fits? Driving 2 hours to a different part of the country, sleeping in a bed that's been slept in by countless other people. We're just packed up in this lodge. Like, it's beautiful, don't get me wrong, but I struggle with it. And maybe it's just like my working class upbringing. I'm like, why are we doing this? Why? Like, there's food at home. Why are we bringing the food that we have at home to this lodge to then cook on a stove? Like, the kitchen's not as nice. We're bumping into each other in the kitchen. I'm like, why are we doing this? But then I chill out, and my wife give me that look. You know, when you're, like, my
yeah.
wife will look me in both eyes, like deeply, and be like, "Baby,
Mm.
we're doing it." I'm like, "Okay,
Yeah,
okay."
don't do it. Although it's quite funny because it's clear that your daughter is very much 50% your child. So
Yep.
and your poor wife, she is the loveliest because she's the one that does all of the effort with trying to book these vacations and stuff in. And she's having to like really like pump everybody up, like, come on, we're gonna go to this amazing holiday. And she does all the planning and the organizing. And then Fabian vacillates between, yeah, cool, and just grumpy old man.
Oh, and I
So
wouldn't even say vacillate. It's definitely grumpy old man, like 95% of the time. Like I was trying to explain to my wife. My wife never got to meet my granddad. But I'm saying I skipped my dad and went straight to my granddad. That's my evolution. Unfortunately, this is what's happened. Like, met a young me, and then I just became my granddad. I'm sorry, there was no in between.
I love it, dude. Honestly, it's very entertaining, to be
Yeah.
honest. It's just
Well,
very entertaining. But I
long
feel like
story.
you also had some quite positive news as a certain type of fan.
Uh, Look, it's been a weird week for Arsenal. Like, so 10 days ago we won the Premier League, first time in 22 years. I got my Arsenal top here. I would be wearing it, but unfortunately, it smells of tension and disappointment. Yesterday we had a Champions League final, and I'm super proud of the team. We've done phenomenally well, but we lost ultimately. It
Mm.
was a tough game, went down to penalty shootout,
Ugh.
and a couple of our best players who have made such a massive contribution during the season, they missed their penalties. And so we lost to PSG. Congratulations to PSG. I would say, like, look, if we was a competition where the team that played the most entertaining football should win, then they did that. I will hold my hands up and say Arsenal were not playing the most entertaining football. But my gripe is that when we were playing entertaining football, everybody was like, well, where's the silverware? And now when we're playing less entertaining football, but football that wins silverware, everyone's like, oh, you're not entertaining. So it's like, what
No.
is it? What do you want? Pick one, because very few teams can do both. And I might just dive into it. This is why I said at the start that I might just be having like an unfiltered stream of thought coming out my mouth, and this is what it is. Okay, so if you've just tuned in, like, just be prepared. I'm gonna talk for a while. I'm gonna try and get as much off my chest as possible. And then Mira, big thank you to you for having to do this. So look, PSG is owned by Qatar. Okay,
Mhm.
worth saying because it means that they can buy the best players and have the biggest investment. And it's one of the things that has stopped us from winning the Premier League over the past 22 years, is that a similar thing has happened in English football, where at one point we were going up against Chelsea, who were owned by Roman Abramovich. Obviously, that came to an end when Russia invaded Ukraine and all of the oligarchs were sanctioned. But then what happened was Manchester City was bought by the UAE royal family. So Sheikh Mansour bought Manchester City. Now they have this footballing group. So the ruling family of the United Arab Emirates has bought Manchester City and basically just dumped a shed load of money into the club. And so that meant that they could buy the best players, offer the best contracts, have the biggest spread. And what Sheikh Mansour has done is built this thing called City Footballing Group, which is a multi-club footballing group, 12 clubs spread across the world, which means that he can buy players that have potential and keep them in the footballing group. And when they're ready to join Manchester City as a top club, that happens, and happens at a low price. So again, lots of things have been happening. I say all this because what happened in 2023 is that the Premier League brought 115 charges of financial fair play against Manchester City Footballing Group, right? So 115 charges where the Premier League has looked into what Manchester City have been doing and said this is completely unfair in terms of how you're spending money, how you're buying players, how you're funding the club. Basically, it's what Arsene Wenger called financial doping. Um, so it's one of those things that has prevented Arsenal from being as successful as it could have been if everybody was playing by the rules. Bear in mind, these charges were brought against Manchester City February 2023, and the charges still haven't been brought forward. We're now in 2026. The reason why I think it's interesting is because a couple of weeks ago, Keir Starmer announced a new trading deal with the UAE and the Gulf nations. So 6 Gulf nations have come together and said, we're going to do this trade agreement, which I think is really interesting because most people are speculating that the charges and the independent review, the verdict on the independent review is going to be brought forward to June of this year. So it's almost as though, because the politics of football meant that we didn't want to embarrass, the UAE or any of the Gulf nations, a lot of those charges and going forward with the legal proceedings was held off until that deal was done and sorted out. Bearing in mind, this deal was first initiated whilst the Conservatives were in power, so this deal has been going on for a long time. And so I say all of this to say that, once you become a football fan, you invariably become interested in global politics because it's unavoidable at the moment. Like, modern football is nation states being interested in your club, in other clubs in your league, largely because, a lot of these oil nations especially are looking at ways of divesting because they know oil won't last forever. It's a finite resource, and it helps with their overall image. We've seen Qatar host the World Cup, we've seen Russia host the World Cup, and now we're seeing the US in a couple of weeks are going to host the World Cup. So all of this to say that, Arsenal are an amazing team, and we haven't had nation states involved in our finances. We have still managed to be successful despite that. We've got an amazing team, and I think in the future we'll win more silverware. That's my tirade over.
Love it. It's not a tirade. It's a lot of really interesting thoughts all pulled together, honestly, love. So that's really fascinating. I didn't realize half of that, to be honest. So that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. But I think to me, it kind of goes back to, I don't know, have you ever seen Ted Lasso on Apple TV Plus?
I've heard of it. I've been told to watch it because obviously it's loved by a lot of people who are
It's
interested in football.
amazing.
I've just not been able to sit down and watch it.
It's absolutely amazing. Highly recommend it. But the thing that always brings me back when I watch Ted Lasso is it is such a great embodiment of what, and I hate to speak in nostalgia terms because I just sound like an old lady now, but it's what football almost used to be, where it was just passion, love for the game. It wasn't all this kind of bullshit rule bending, being owned by nation states, the conflation between like trade agreements and breaking the rules in English football so that you flip the league. Basically, you create an uneven playing field. I hate UEFA, FIFA, all of these really incredibly corrupt footballing bodies that have just fucking ruined football, to be
Absolutely.
honest, for me. Absolutely ruined it. Like the World Cup, I used to watch the Premier League religiously, but when I was younger, my dad was a huge football fan. We loved the World Cup. I mean, we were a World Cup family. The flag goes up, the England flag goes up. We've got all of the wall art, got to track of every single game, blah, blah, blah. And then Qatar hosted the World Cup, and I was like, yeah, nah, you're right, bruv. I don't want to really be watching some nation state that's barely been involved in football, that's killed God knows how many workers to build these ridiculous stadiums. I'm not really that interested in watching this beautiful game on the back of these dead souls, to be honest. So it kind of put me off. And now with America as well, I feel like I'm just going to be watching the games from Mexico and Canada, to be honest. I mean, the Americans are shit at football, frankly. They don't really have any passion for it. They find it hard to even call it football because they still call it soccer, for crying out loud. So how the hell that's going to work in America, I don't know. And by the way, I'm not shitting on the Americans because, as you guys know, I do love the Americans. Just I hate Trump so much and the MAGA nonsense. And it just feels like everything is being ruined. Like football is ruined for me. That's what makes me feel sad. Like when fans can't afford to go and follow their own teams that they've been following for years and years and years because prices have become ridiculous. I don't know if a revolution needs to be had where people take back football. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It was a working class sport, right? It was never like rugby was always almost rugby and cricket were almost a bit like it's a
Mm.
lot of posh people, it's a little bit toffee, you know. Whereas football was always a working class sport, no?
Yeah, 100%. In fact, like again, the roots of Arsenal. So Arsenal came about as a team that was the men that worked at an munitions company, munitions factory, and so that's why they got the name Arsenal. That's why they have the cannon as their crest, right?
No.
And so a lot of these teams are based around like sort of 1940s, 1950s, just men coming together and playing football, having finished work at the factory. So it's always been working class. And at the moment, as you say, like it's getting so expensive to just be a supporter. So case in point, the Champions League yesterday final, in the modern era, this was the first final that hasn't been free to view. So TNT owned the rights to it and didn't allow it to be free to view. All the other finals in the modern era have been free to view, either on YouTube or some other channel. And so you've got to pay to watch it now. And it's everything, you know, in terms of like even going to a match, it's just so expensive. Watching a game on TV is so expensive. Buying a jersey, an official jersey, is so expensive. So even things like a lot of people are just buying these fake jerseys. There's been a pushback because people are saying the jerseys are funding, you know, more dangerous criminal activity. But the average fan is like, well, if you're charging me 70, sometimes £90 for a T-shirt, right, with the official logo on the kit, then I'd rather just pay the 30, £40 being offered by the fake offer.
Yeah,
So
but criminal who, love? Which criminal organization are you referring to? Those super rich clubs owned by nation states, UEFA, FIFA, or some bugger who's on Amazon who's got his own store selling fake shit?
and
Like,
this is it. This is it. And even again, I will bring this up, and I need to look into it more. But you know, one of our sleeve sponsors previously was the Rwandan government. So it's a visit Rwanda. Our new sleeve sponsor is Deal, who are founded by a Israeli individual, and so a lot of people are sort of saying, I don't really want to wear this company name on the sleeve of the club that I support. So again, it's football and politics are just being closer and closer together, and it's really unfortunate that it's going in that direction.
can I ask a question, love? Because
Of course.
whenever this came up yesterday, I forget who was talking about this. Oh, it was one of these idiot manosphere guys talking about losing friends because of politics. And I think the thing for me that I'm always fascinated by is we call it politics, but isn't it more about morality? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
so we say the politics of the state of Israel, but it's not necessarily the state of Israel. It's more the fact that the Israeli government is committing genocide with seemingly impunity, and not least with the West Bank settlers. Now, they just been tagged in the United Nations for crimes against people because of the sexual violence that's being unleashed on the Palestinians, which honestly is one of the I don't know if you guys have read the because Fabian and I have discussed this before, but I don't know if you read the New York Times article. I couldn't even make it through the whole thing in one sitting because it was so horrific. Similarly with the Congo, by the way, the level of sexual violence in the Congo is horrific. And the violence in the Sudan, very, very similar, not least potentially allegedly funded by the UAE, which is probably like an interesting thread going back to our trade deal, sponsorship of Man City conversation. But yeah, just to me, I think it's just more about the morality, love. I think that's where it's very difficult, isn't it? Because if you're okay with supporting a genocide, I'm not okay with you. Like, Fabian and I couldn't be friends if we sat on opposite sides of this. If Fabian believes that there needs to be less government regulation, and I believe there needs to be more government regulation, that's slightly different. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're saying that a woman's right to choose, i.e., around abortion, is not hers. Her body is not hers. It's not under her control. You and I are moralistically going to have a problem because I don't believe that is the morally right thing to do, because it's not, least not applied equally between the sexes, but it's not morally right to do. If you agree that a woman should be forced to carry a baby that she doesn't want to term and then have to look after it, that to me means we sit on opposite sides of a moral debate.
Well,
That to me is not politics.
I think the thing for me is we've got to the point where we sort of disassociate politics with the people. And actually, you can't have politics in a democracy without the people.
That's
And this disassociation, I think, helps people in, you know, government positions,
mm.
MPs or whoever wants to sort of control the political narrative. The people need to take back politics, especially in a democracy, because otherwise it's not going to function. And we've spoken about it plenty of times that this democracy we're experiencing isn't a functioning democracy. It doesn't function because we don't engage with it enough. Unfortunately, like it's like part of it is on us. We have to sort of take some accountability for where we are in a democracy. The choice is still ours, and if we vote for the right people, if we do the background reading, if we engage with the right things and make decisions that are informed, then we will have a better democracy. We're not where where we should be at the moment. I think we've got the political environment that we deserve through just our own laziness as a nation.
Do you think, love, that, just playing devil's advocate, that it's extremely difficult for people right now because, to your point, there's the politics which should represent the people and what we want, and then there's also the morality that's being forgotten. So, case in point, for example, the Labour government have put a whole host of policies in place that do help largely the working classes. So PIP payments, disability payments, removing the 2-child cap, freezing income thresholds, which will really hit the middle classes, but luckily doesn't affect the working classes as much, et cetera, et cetera. But they also have leaders like Rachel Reeves, who's the Chancellor, for example, and seemingly Keir Starmer, allegedly, that are Zionists. So they're happy for the ideology that the Jewish state of Israel effectively exists at any cost. They have a right to that land. And it doesn't really matter that there were millions and millions of people that were living there. And what's happening in the country right now is a genocide in Gaza and obviously the settlements in the West Bank. The challenge, I feel like, for most people is, what do I do now? Because ideologically, for most of the points that I would agree with the Labour government, but this moral point around their silence and their complicity in this genocide, how can I make peace with that? And then the question is, where do I look? Like, where do I go? Now, luckily, there are parties like the Green Party, they're the Lib Dems. But the reality is, you're not going to agree with every single policy that these people say, right? And obviously you then got the far extremes of like conservatives, reform, restore, etc., that again, they don't really have policies as such. They just have sound bites. There's nothing really actionable that you can kind of hang on to. A lot of the stuff that they say is rubbish. Nothing's ever going to happen from it, and you'll only realize too late after they come into government and they'll make excuses. But I think that's where I feel like it's a little bit of a struggle, love, to be honest, right now, because, and it's not like, to your point though, it's not like people haven't been trying. I mean, I've written to my MP like how many times about the genocide. People have been protesting. Protesters are being arrested, like, and criminalized. I mean, more so than you know, people who are committing violence, as we saw with these kids who raped young girls that just got away with it, they get rehabilitation orders, but a British pensioner who's protesting against a genocide gets a freaking charge, and it doesn't make any sense, right? I
Yeah,
just
I think the angle I would come at it from is that, you know, it's taken a while to get to where we are politically. Take a
Mm.
while to get to a place where I think we all feel this is a better position to be in. So, whilst you're right, like people are doing work, it's definitely going to take more of us, and it's definitely going to take a lot more time. Um, and I think to your point around, we're all going to disagree on some points. I think there are some points that we can all agree on which aren't being enacted. The will of the people on those points isn't being enacted.
Mm.
We talk about the wealth disparity between the top 1% or even 0.1% and the rest of us. Like that shouldn't happen in a democracy. Like how do you so few people have that much control of the nation's wealth in a democracy? So, you know, those are the things that we can all agree on. Um, and how we get there, like I'm this might be wrong, okay? And again, we're here to discuss. I keep saying it, so I'm not trying to be right. I'm just trying to like articulate some thoughts and work our way to a better space. But we have such great access to information. Like we can do the research and come to, I guess, objective conclusions. There's a lot of subjectivity out there, which is fine. Like subjectivity is a normal part of being human. But if it's rooted in like solid objective fact, and I know there's a conversation with what is a fact,
Mm.
which is a whole other thing I don't think we need to get to now, but I do believe we can all do the research and simple things like if we look at um like I meant we were discussing a graph that showed how Donald Trump's wealth has increased over the time he spent in office, right? That's objective, right? And we've seen things even more recently where, again, we've looked at Donald Trump buying shares in Dell before doing a government contract with Dell. And so there's all these things happening right in front of us. I don't know, maybe this is a good segue to look at Tony Blair because for me, he is one of those sort of people who embodies the phrase you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain. Because at the moment he's just like he's
That is brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
he's just not he's a bit of a monster at the moment. And
Yeah.
I'm really surprised because at one point he was the hero of the working classes, right? And I don't know, it's just fallen apart recently. I can go on because I had a little look, right? And so obviously he's got the Tony Blair Institute, which is a non-profit organization until you look into it and you see, well, who's funding that? So, so the money is coming from Larry Ellison, and this is based on a report done by the New Statesman, where they found that as much as $300 million has been put into the Tony Blair Institute from Larry Ellison. Remember, we've spoken about Larry Ellison being the Oracle founder, the guy who's bought Paramount, who is looking to buy Warner Brother, who's trying to control as much of the media as possible. And so, really uncomfortable.
And sorry to interrupt you,
Go ahead.
and he's the single largest donor to the IDF, private donor to the IDF.
And so again, really uncomfortable that this is the guy that's contributing to the Tony Blair Institute to that sort of figure, to that sort of number, because you don't do that unless you want to influence what's being said by the person who is the mouthpiece of that organization. And so
Mm.
when you hear Tony Blair saying things, you're like, where's this coming from? Like, why have you become that guy? And again, really weird that he's talking about, how net zero isn't a thing that we should be concerned about when we've just gone through the hottest May on record. Like, what are you talking about?
Stupidity, dude.
What?
It's
But
absolute
this,
stupidity.
I think, is beyond stupidity. He knows what he's saying. He's
Yeah,
just
100%.
corrupt. He's been paid to say something different because it benefits the people who have invested in him. And then you look beyond that and you see Ewan Blair, his son, with Multiverse. And obviously, at one point, there was, I think a few people in the media had to retract the comment about him being involved in this government digital ID initiative. But he is still involved in a number of initiatives. What I saw was that his company, Multiverse, is valued at £1.4 billion. It's this apprenticeship company and has over 500 companies involved, including Microsoft, Visa, and Morgan Stanley. And so this is a guy who clearly is benefiting from being involved with Tony Blair, right? It's, the son. And then including in that, he's also working with Palantir. So again, like this whole thing is all tied up together. Final point on that, his Tony Blair's daughter-in-law is also being put forward as boss for a taxpayer-funded company that is receiving £500 million from the government. And again, it's like all of this money is just being accumulated in this family. And this guy was the champion at one point. And
You know what's wild to me, love, is so Tony Blair's wife, her sister, I believe, she was the person who uncovered the 1MDB scandal. So the Malaysian government had purportedly used taxpayer pension funds to buy and build Battersea Power Station. So she uncovered that scandal. So I find it so... Is incongruous the right word? Like how is this, how have they gotten here? Like to your point, how did he go from being a well-respected prime minister who actually I would have credited with being a young person during that Labour government, had benefited because we didn't come from a rich family, had benefited, to this guy now? Because I was saying to Fabian, like I really struggled to make it even through watching what he was saying, because it was such utter nonsense. And I'm looking at him thinking, so this war criminal is getting a platform despite the fact that he was purportedly tagged to be on the board of peace to try and take over effectively the rights of Palestinians to have their own say and their own voice, with the genocidal guy and the guy who was funding the genocide. Like, to me, I find that whole thing absolutely wild, because the fact that he even has a voice, love, like people are actually engaging and listening to his opinion. I'm like, what have we become? Like, how did we get here? Honestly, like, we are the country that rightfully is proudful of the fact that we intervened in the Second World War to do what was right. That's our country. That is our history. That's our legacy. And we rightly celebrate the fallen soldiers during that time. What has happened to us that now we're sitting back and watching / facilitating another mass human event, like catastrophe like this? Like, I don't understand. And the people that were originally the champions are now the villains. And everything is so, like you said, everything is so corrupted and winding and interlinked that as a layperson like us, how the hell are you supposed to unpick change? That's the only piece I struggle with, love, because I agree with you. Like, this has to come from us, right? But as a layperson who doesn't have the time to sit and pull these connections together and read all of this and see it, because my friends say that to me, right? Like, a lot of my friends say, like, we just don't have the time, Mira, because we're juggling so much. And it seemingly feels like what they're trying to do is really disenfranchise us and make us feel powerless, right? That is exactly the strategy, right? They bombard us, like Steve Bannon said it, bombard us constantly, make us feel really powerless, blah, blah, blah. But the challenge is, to your earlier point, which I think you've been saying on every podcast, is nothing changes until something changes. And if we don't drive that something, this is just going to get worse and worse and worse. Not least because we should talk about this as well, love. The stats that came out on the young people that aren't in education, employment, or training this week, the young people, the young young girls, sorry, have been raped, then their perpetrators were facing no justice. Like, what is the world that we're leaving behind?
Yeah.
This is the bit.
It's I sound like overbearing parent sometimes, because my thing is, like, the great thing about us having these conversations is that it forces us to engage with what's going on in the world, Like it forces me to sort of pay attention to things that I might otherwise say, okay, I'm not interested in this right now.
Yeah.
And so this has become like, it's become a practice in the same way that like if you want to get fit, you have to work out at regular intervals on a weekly basis, 3, 4 times a week, whatever it is. If you have that practice and you keep it in place, you're consistent with it, you get stronger. And I think it's a bit like engaging with politics, engaging with current affairs, is that you've got to sort of set time aside and say, okay, I'm not going to watch this TV show. I'm actually going to watch the news, or I'm actually going to read a newspaper, or I'm actually going to like research a thought that I had, because there are so many ways I can just like jump on Google and sort of say, I had a thought about this. Let me
Yeah.
find out a bit more about it, and make it self-guided. Like you don't have to follow what you see being churned out on the BBC or whatever news channel. You can look for yourself. We have the tools. We have so much capability. Like the mobile phone can take you anywhere you want.
It's so
And so
true.
I get it, right? Like it's not easy to do, but it's one of those things of like choose your hard. Like it's hard to live in a world where there's so much corruption going on. The only way to deal with it is to be aware of it and vote better whilst we still have a democracy. And
Yeah.
not having a democracy would be so much harder. So choose your hard.
100%. And I'm always struck by exactly to your point, love. I love that, by the way. So I'm 100% absolutely is it's the star of our podcast this week. Absolutely brilliant. I think I'm always struck, love, exactly to your point. So this guy Adam, I forget his surname. He's on the Canary, the news outlet, the Canary,
Okay.
right? And he interviews people who are, I guess, effectively reform supporters. So he starts by saying, what do you think of Nigel Farage? Love him. Absolutely brilliant. He's the best thing ever happened. Then he said, oh, so can I, do you mind if I just read you some of the things that he said? Or he's an MP, right? So there's 4 Reform MPs currently in Parliament. He's voted against abolishing no-fault evictions. He's voted against taking away 0-hour contracts. He's voted against, etc., etc. And then they're like, oh, no, I don't like him. No, I don't believe in any of that stuff. Taking abortion rights. Oh, no, I absolutely, women have the right to choose. And then you're just like, how can we possibly have, 50, what's our population now? 60 million, 50 plus million adults in this who get to vote between 16 and 65 or whatever the hell it is. How are we going to replicate this guy to go and talk to everybody? Like, for the love of Christ, like, to your point, peoples, listen, I mean, I'm not a gym goer, as you could probably tell, which I'm trying to change, but I make the effort, to Fabian's point, to try and actually, like, critically think about it. Like, even this, okay, I'll give you an example. So this week, Reform came out with another headline policy. Overtime will not yield any taxes. Great. Okay, great. Great headline, right? Oh, wow. No taxes? That's incredible on overtime. Then you have to sit and think with it for a little bit. And then you're like, hold on a second. But what does that actually mean in practice, right? Does that mean companies can reduce your basic salary and then put the rest of it as overtime because your salary doesn't change, but you only benefit because they now supposedly don't charge tax on the overtime element? Or how about we're thinking about the fact that if people only get to live because of overtime, maybe the main issue is that you don't have a living wage. So maybe pay people a living wage so they don't have to work 60 hours a week in order to be able to survive. So like just stuff like that. And then research it. So like France did something similar. It cost the economy something crazy like 5 billion euros or something, but actually didn't yield any positive benefit or uplift.
Wow.
And in fact, I think in reality, it doesn't really benefit the worker. It will just benefit the employer because they'll play silly buggers, right? Because they're also trying to take protections away. So yeah, I mean, you're spot on, love.
I mean, yeah, I don't. This is one of the things where I would happily be wrong. So if anyone is watching this and has a comment and they can say, this is wrong because, and point to some sort of resource, I would love to see that. So please don't be afraid to comment if you disagree with us.
I feel like we have some good commenters, to be honest. So I'm thinking people may not be. But yeah, I think it's a fair point. And I do understand because I have this debate with my friends as well. Like, yes, you're busy, But ultimately, you know, it's like you say, love, it either happens to you. And then the problem is by the time it happens to you, it's just too late.
Yeah.
It's too late to do anything then, right? And we're seeing like in America, every day it gets worse.
Yeah.
Honestly, it just gets worse and worse for the Americans while this corrupt numpty is just taking the mick, honestly. Like,
It
it's wild.
it feels a bit like I don't know how true this is, and maybe it's something I should look up, but they used to say that when the Roman leadership wanted to distract the crowd, they would throw like gladiatorial matches, right? And that would be the way of like distracting the citizens from what else is going on in the world. And then you kind of just fast forward to today and you see Trump building like a stadium for UFC outside of the White House. And you're like, whoa, like this is meant to be like one of the most cherished, valued, and principled institutions of America, and you're building a platform so that two guys can beat the crap out of each other in front of it. And it's like, what has happened to him?
Gladiatorial,
And it's just going
100%.
back to
Yeah.
gladiators, right? And this is the thing. I mean, look, maybe we can use this as a segue to talk about Married at First Sight because I don't know. I never watched it, so I'm probably the wrong person to comment on it. But it feels like it was always going to end badly, and it was just a matter of time before how bad it was revealed.
So I am a diehard fan of Married at First Sight. So let me help you out here, bruv. Let me help you out. This is one thing I could talk about. No, just kidding. So Married at First Sight originally started in the UK, I believe. I remember watching the first season. And the principle, again, for any of those of us who come from, communities where historically arranged marriages were a thing, this wasn't the revelation one believes it to be. But effectively, they had a panel of people that matched a couple together, but they only met on their wedding day. Now, over time, the wedding day is obviously not real, but effectively you're married, right? So you're married at first sight, and then they go on honeymoon, and then they spend time living together, and then they decide whether they want to progress or not. That was the original premise of the show. Now, fast forward multiple seasons, and the reality is Married at First Sight has just become a platform for people that want to grow their social media base. So Married at First Sight Australia, which is one of the most ridiculously brilliant shows because it's just awful. Like they don't even like this season was terrible because they didn't even pretend that they were interested in getting married. They just needed to get airtime to the point where, love, the camera crews, so they're filmed all the time, by the way, or at least they're filmed most of the time, not all of the time. So they are filmed in their apartments. There are some weird ones, like the one in America where, now I think this might have been Love is Blind, but where they filmed them like just before they had sex sort of thing. That was super creepy. But anyway, there's that. But what they've started to do now, because because people are so savvy and they want to build their social media base, they basically started releasing the bit where they hot mic people, so they don't realize they're hot mic'd, and then they start releasing that. That's how bad it's gotten. But essentially what came out this week on Married at First Sight UK was that there were participants who had been raped by the person that they had been matched with, their husband, during the show. They had said they'd raised their concerns with the production company Channel 4, and their concerns essentially were not met. Now, the reality is, love, I think that, as you just mentioned, it was always going to end this way because the problem is they stopped. Firstly, they lost sight of the principle of the show, which is finding people genuinely. I remember the first season where they were struggling to find a match. They thought, you know what, let's go old school. Let's go to these folks who do psychological assessments, talk about your lifestyle. They learn about your personality. Like they do that. Like again, like if you're in an Asian or an African community where perhaps you had arranged marriages historically, this is what they would do, right? So that was the first thing. They went away from that premise. You start bringing people on that really don't have any interest in this. They just want to get airtime. You also then, because the show starts becoming more and more ridiculous, the quality of the candidates that then come on is also lowered. So again, what kind of vetting are they really doing for these people that you ended up in this situation? 3, they almost encourage very fast intimacy as well, right? Now, it's, to me, again, it's very strange because unless you are in a situation where you consented to have a one night stand, more often than not, when you're in a marriage situation, you don't really know anything about this person. You literally met them like 4 hours ago. And then everybody on the honeymoon is like, oh, have you had sex? Have you had sex? So you're sort of like creating this sort of pressure keg environment as well, where people are sort of forced to feel like they need to fast track intimacy, which I think also blurs the lines on consent as well, right? Which I think is quite dangerous, really. And then the final thing is this is filmed, but it's not filmed consistently. So they're not there all the time. There are periods where the couple are just left on their own, right? And that's when the trouble appears to have started.
It's horrible. I mean, again, there's so much to unpack there. I think it's lovely you said where they lost sight was, going from trying to actually match people based on psychometrics versus just putting people together. I think they lost sight. I think they just decided that it was better ratings to have
True.
controversy,
So
and
true.
producers were just like, yeah, let's just not even attempt to match people. I saw so I was listening to a podcast, The Guardian did a podcast on it, and they were saying that um in some of the more recent episodes, they were putting a couple together. So one guy who still lived at home with his mum, with a woman who was like owned her own business, was doing all sorts of things and was a real go-getter, and they put those two together. So clearly they were trying to put like oil and water together because they knew that was going to create something more explosive and controversial. And that's exactly what happened, right? And so for me, like we've seen one that a lot of the people sound like maybe they weren't young enough or good looking enough to get onto Love Island. So, as an alternative thing, they went to Love at First Sight. And to your point, they're just trying to build some sort of fame or celebrity, right? And then as you also said, like, I guess when the reality TV phenomenon started, it was with Big Brother, where they were in a house. It was, I guess, a managed environment. Cameras were on 24/7. The producers were constantly watching, and so there was that sort of level of safety all the time. You
Mm.
fast forward to today, where, like you say, that level of safety isn't there anymore. Maybe because of cost-cut measures. I know the COVID-19 pandemic hit TV really hard, and even though like reality TV still got done, it was done at much lower cost. And so I think like cost-cutting measures have led to reductions in the level of safety as well.
Mm.
But I mean, also we've seen not just Love at First Sight, but issues with MasterChef, issues with Strictly Come Dancing, issues where effectively, for whatever reason, we've allowed male predators, I think it's always been the men that have been the problem, come onto these shows and have access to women in ways that are just putting the women's safety at risk.
Mm.
And their complaints, their alarm bells are just not being heard. There was a contestant who was on the X Factor, and she had been assaulted. Um, Frankly, it wasn't by someone that was part of the show, but it happened while she was on the show.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so again, it's like so much of this has happened. It's been like historic in a way where we know that there is issues, and
Mm.
yet it's been allowed to continue. It's really unfortunate, and I guess like hopefully now something serious enough will be done to force anyone who is in charge of a reality TV show to really ramp up safety measures.
I don't know though, love. I would love to think that. But I think the challenge is, even if you think about, look what happened with Caroline Flack, for example. So an accusation was made. She was absolutely hounded by the press to the point where she committed suicide. What's really changed after that? Like these guys are still, I don't buy or follow any of these rags, these like celebrity rags, because I honestly can't tell the difference between these paparazzi and stalkers, to be honest with you. And I personally don't feel like unless someone has consented, I have the right to their life. Personally, don't get me wrong. I'm still Google things and be like, oh, so and so's married to so and so. Oh, that's so exciting. Like I didn't know, but and I think the other thing for me, love, is ultimately, and I think one of the Guardian journalists did mention this in an opinion piece, the married at first sight controversy that's happened this week, or let's call a spade, the rape of these women has happened because this is a reflection of society. Like, look at the level of safety that women are accustomed to. I mean, it's absolutely insane. I had my twin cousins around the other day. They're 24 years old, beautiful girls. And just listening to them talk about the measures that they're basically having to take. And it's almost like it's learned. It's like it's not a conscious decision. It's subconsciously they're doing all of these things to this guy's harassing me. I'm going to pretend I don't hear him, but I try not to be too rude. So I sort of smile a bit, and then I cover my drink, and then I watch my drink, and then I see where my friend is, and then I don't see it. And then I feel this guy's following me. So what I quickly do is try and get my phone out and hold my key in my hand and hold it like a weapon. So just in case and you're just like,
It's insane.
what the effing hell is going on? And nothing changes, love. If you speak to your mum's generation, my mum's generation, you speak to our generation, you speak to now the girls' generation, and God forbid, our nieces and nephews, your daughter, for example, their generation, what is actually changing? And an example of that this week is there has been a lot of high profile instances of cases that have been brought up in the press this week of girls as young as 14 that have been raped. One particular incident, she had been raped by two guys, I think over two encounters, where one at one point they held her at knife point, another they were filming it and then released the video as well. The judge felt that because the perpetrators were children, so I think they were 15 or 16 years old, they shouldn't be tarred with this for life, and therefore they should have a rehabilitation order and not a prison sentence. And to me, love, now putting aside prison versus rehab for a second, the fundamental issue for me on this is not realizing that being raped is a life sentence. That is a life sentence that will affect her as many other women have been affected for the rest of her life. And yet there's no consideration paid to the fact that this heinous act has happened to her. And I was saying to a friend of mine, like, the thing to delineate for me, love, on this is it's not like they were young kids that pickpocketed. They stole some sweets from Sainsbury's. Maybe they nicked an electric bike or whatever it is, none of which are good. They're all crimes. But not tarring kids, if you can find a rehabilitation order to put them on a better path away from a life of petty, low-level crime, is one thing. But in this instance, this is a life-altering event for this girl, these two girls. There's many instances, by the way, but these few girls. Life-altering, whole life changes. In the instance of, like, murder, like, if they'd murdered a guy, how many young black boys who have stabbed other black boys have gone straight to prison and tried as adults? Where are their rehabilitation orders? Like, rightly, they murdered someone. That's a life sentence. You've taken someone's life away. And I think that's what I find so egregious about this whole thing. Like, nothing ever changes. We have a 2% rape conviction in this country, love. 2%. If there was any other crime where we had a 2% conviction rate, people would be kicking off. Like, stuff would be overturned. Cars would be lit on fire. But no, because it happens to women, just like, unless it serves the far right to just cherry pick a couple of cases where you're an important victim if you were raped by a brown or black person, but you're not important if you're raped by a white person.
A 2% conviction rate is almost tacit approval. Like, go ahead.
100%.
Like, your chances are good, you know? And I think the bit that really stood out for me is, one of the girls said, having gone through the process of going to trial and getting this verdict, it was like, what was the point? It was like having the stone slammed in my face. And it's like, yeah, like I can't imagine like being on trial as a victim for anything, let alone rape, and then hearing that the person who did it is getting away with it. And these are young women,
Mm.
like there's it's
Girls.
like girls. They're not even women. Th-
The children.
It's so horrible. And again, so this is one of the things where I think it's right to call it evil to sort of put a young girl through that.
Yeah.
And
And Yeah, sort of. And I think it was Jordan Stevens. You know that guy who was in Rizzle Kicks, I think it
Oh, yeah.
was? You know,
Yeah.
he's absolutely brilliant. So like I know we shouldn't recommend other people to follow, but
Yeah.
please follow him because
Oh, yeah.
he's just incredible. Like the way he articulates quite complex things. I can never quite get I talk too much, right? It takes me 70,000 words to say things. He can articulate so well, but he was saying like what we need to get to as a society is where the rapist is almost treated like a leper, where rape is considered so egregious, and understanding the impact on a woman or a child's life of being raped, it is such a life sentence for the victim that actually it should be a life sentence for the perpetrator as well. They should be shunned by their friends. They should be ostracized by their families. Now, I'm obviously, yeah, I'm not repeating what you said verbatim. I think he said it in a nicer way, but I think that's the piece, isn't it, love? Because it's almost like if women are victims, it sort of doesn't really matter that much. Like, does it? Not sure. And even in instances like where, if you look at the actual statistics as well, which I won't quote because I need to go refresh myself, but if you look at the actual statistics, the number of cases that are actually put forward for prosecution are very, very limited. The number of cases that are waiting trial is taking like 2 years for a victim to get any kind of justice based on this heinous act that's happened to them. The number of times that you go as a victim into the courts, because of our justice system, the English justice system, the burden of proof is on the victim almost to prove that something has happened, right? Imagine facing that kind of trauma under the aggression of a prosecution lawyer, combined with societal lack of understanding of what it means, what rape means, why rape happens, and also the reaction of women to rape. So, like, one of the famous cases that happened in Spain was a young girl that was gang raped by these guys who filmed it. When they showed the film, they released them with effectively a lesser charge than rape because they felt that she complied. Because they don't understand, and this woman, she's a psychologist, she explains that there's a lack of education because women biologically are weaker than men. The biological response is to be compliant. Just don't get killed. Just don't get hurt. I cannot fight this person, so I'm just going to keep quiet and let whatever's happening because I want to get out of this life.
It's insane. If you're outnumbered, I don't care if you're a man or a woman, if you've got four guys trying to attack you as a man, then you know you're not going to win that. So
Yeah.
as a woman, like clearly you're not in a position to fight back. So
No.
what do you do?
And even in one-on-one love, like in this situation where the girl was raped, like you're fearful for your life. You're experiencing this extreme trauma. You thought you were in a safe position and now you're not. And I think so this whole piece, so I guess going back to the beginning, the reason this obviously this Married at First Sight UK, these horrific instances where women were raped by the person that they were matched with on the show, looking at the low conviction rates or no conviction rates really for these kids that have committed rapes on young girls. They're young girls. No, people are now, the Attorney General is now looking at those sentences essentially. But why did it happen in the first place though? We really need to look at ourselves as a society and say, like, why? Why does this keep happening? Why is nothing really being done?
Can I ask you your thoughts on how important the ages of the perpetrators is in this? Because
Yeah,
at what point is like, are they too young to be tried? Because I that's the bit where I'm kind of like, I struggle.
yeah. But I think the thing I struggle with love is, at what point are you too young to be the victim?
100%.
Do you see what I
Well,
mean? Like,
I guess it's because you're right. The the suffering of the victim has to be put first. I guess my question is, how do you punish someone that is also a child? Like,
mm,
is there, can you fit, again, we're not answering questions here.
mm.
We're just discussing. How do you fairly punish someone who is also underage, 14, 15, however old they were, and that be something that is satisfactory or like I can't get my head around
There's a
it.
nuance. I do think there's a nuance. I do take your point. My personal belief is I think that, the whole purpose of the criminal justice system was that the threat of prison was supposed to be enough that people were change their actions so that they didn't end up there, right? The reality is crime is very complex. So there's a number of poverty and social inequality, they drive that. I think the thing for me on these instances, love, is there is definitely nuance in it. So is there an instance where a young boy and a young girl started getting together, and then at some point she was like, "Ooh, I'm not sure about this," but he carried on and he raped her because consent is important. First time offender, never did anything. I don't know. Like, is there an argument to say that maybe this was maybe this is training people around consent, etc.? As I'm talking to myself, I'm kind of like, no, love, I'm sorry.
No,
I
but
don't think there
you
is
have
an
to answer.
age. Do you know
You
why, love? Because, shall I tell you why? Because
know,
as a young girl, we are implicitly conditioned to have to know what we should or shouldn't do to keep ourselves safe.
yeah,
And anytime something happens to us, irrespective of whatever age we are, even if you're a young teenage girl, they'll say, you dressed up, you wore too much makeup. He couldn't tell. The outfit you were wearing, he couldn't tell. It was hard for him. Like, the number of times my cousins, they've been sexually harassed on public transport by old guys when they were in their school uniform.
it's fucking
So
insane.
I struggle honestly with the age thing, love, especially in this particular case where they were laughing about it. They had a knife. They filmed it. These are actions of someone who has thought and considered what they're doing. They put it online for other people to watch. They had observed these things. And I think there has to be, in the same way as a parent of a girl, from quite a young age, you have to teach your girls how to try and keep themselves safe. As a parent of a boy, you have a responsibility to make sure you teach your boy how to keep girls safe. And that means trying to stop them engaging with the manosphere, teaching them about consent, helping them understand what rape is and what rape isn't, and drawing a line between when you have a sexual desire or an urge or your hormones are pushing you to do something, but the other person is not okay with that. Like, this can all be taught. And I feel, love, in our society, we burden women and girls with that, but we don't put the same burden on boys and men.
100%. As you were talking, I was thinking that maybe, and again, we're just talking, but maybe the burden should be on the parents when the child is still a child, and maybe it's a case of saying, okay, we can't put that child in prison, but maybe we let the parents decide which one of them should do prison time. Because I'm sorry, like I'm of the belief that you blame the parents. Like, you are raising this child. It's your responsibility to raise uh, a, a a member of society that can contribute or at least maintain what we have. And if you've not done that, that's on you. That's not. You can't blame the child. That's my feeling on it.
That's super interesting. Yeah, because it's interesting, love, but as you're saying that, I'm thinking, because you know the guy, Rajeshka, the guy, the young kid who murdered those girls at the dance class, the Taylor Swift dance class.
Oh,
That guy. So immediately when the sentencing happened, all of particularly the right-wing papers came out and said, oh, it's the parents' fault. Blame the parents. And to be fair, love, the parents did make a lot of mistakes. Like, they knew he left the house with a weapon that day and they did not tell the police.
that's
They
nuts.
knew that he has clearly got a lot of behavioral issues, violence issues. They were too scared something would happen to him. So they didn't do something about it. My only pushback in that conversation was they only ever say it when the perpetrator is black
Mm.
or brown. Let's apply this holistically, exactly to your point, right? Because they've been super silent, the Tommy Robinsons and the reforms and the restores this week, when we're talking about these cases where the young boys are white. Well, why aren't we talking about their parents? To your point, why aren't we going after their parents and saying, how the hell did you let your kid
Yeah,
leave the house with a knife and do this to a little girl?
I want to hear those answers.
It's a great point.
It's your responsibility as a parent. That's how I feel. So I don't know.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
You know, because we had this debate. And this is a funny one because I know this is gonna cause controversy. I know it will, but
Yeah.
we always talk about right love. You know, when before you guys had kids, obviously before our group had kids, we used to talk about like private versus public, state schools. We used to talk about single sex versus mixed schools. And what I'm finding is, the reality is the stats speak for themselves, right? So if you have a girl, it's actually better for the girl to be in a single sex girls' school because academically she does significantly better. And having seen the experiences of my cousins in mixed schools, to be honest, in this day and age, I'm kind of like, listen, send them to six of the single sex schools. But what I always find is whenever you have this debate in a friendship group or wider friendship group, the parents of boys always say, no, no, it's really important to be able to have mixed schools because, at the end of the day, they have to really learn to mix. And I'm kind of always a bit like, but is that because you know that your boys only do better in mixed schools versus single sex schools? Do you know what I mean? So like, it's almost like we have to kind of sacrifice the girls a little bit because it's really important for the boy to be okay, and his education is super important, and but it's his social development, and he needs to meet with the girls. Just like,
It's a bit like when people get a puppy for the first time and they're like, oh, we have to socialize the puppy so it knows how to behave in groups and doesn't bite people, doesn't pee on people. And it's like the same thing with little boys. And look, I wouldn't have said this until I became a girl dad. And suddenly, like, having gone to a few of the local schools and having seen how the girls' school produced girls that were not suppressed in any way. Like they were just confident. They expressed themselves freely. Like it's still like every now and then we have like we had a concert the other day at the school. And so we went in and you have like these, I don't know, maybe they were like 8 or 9 years old and they were given leaflets to the parents as they came in. And the way they were so confident, like it still surprises me. I'm like, this is not my experience of being in a mixed school, right? Like, girls were more timid, more reserved. Like, it was just, and I thought that was the normal state of young women because that's all I experienced. And having seen these girls in the single sex school just be so confident, I'm like, wow, this is what I want for my child. And so again, it was one of those things that I would not have believed until I became what I am today. And
yeah.
so I can almost empathize with if you don't have a young girl, how would you know? You know?
Yeah, that's fair. And it's something I read as well. Someone was talking about this. I hate LinkedIn, but somebody did say this, which I never thought about because I went to a single sex school. Is the thing with single sex schools is predominantly your teachers are women. Our head teacher was a woman. So actually, we grew up in an environment where we saw women as the leaders,
Yep.
successful. They were the imparters of the information. They were the one that controlled the school. They were the one that provided direction. So it's super interesting because I never ever thought about it like that. But actually, you do take that in because that is what you see. Whereas when you go into my corporate life, where I worked predominantly in tech, where it's like 80% guys, you don't see very, very few women leaders,
Yep.
very, very few women managers. And then you're almost, had I not had that experience, obviously growing up, I would have just thought, oh yeah, but then men will always have to be the managers, right? Men always have to be the CEOs. And you see that, right? When they do the stats, when they do the surveys, people believe that men make better CEOs, men make better directors, like, so yeah, no, it's fascinating, isn't it, love? Like, I know we didn't necessarily want to talk about like the gender debate, I suppose, today, but it was just really interesting when you see people's reactions. And then also what I found particularly interesting this week is that the silence of a lot of folks as well, right? Like even, the riots that happened in Southport, I think it was like 2 years ago or something.
Yeah.
1 in 5 people that participated in those have been arrested or convicted on domestic violence charges.
Wow. Yeah.
1 in 5.
It's crazy.
1 in 7 women and girls in their lifetime will be experience violence at the hands of a man across the spectrum. Everything from, like serious sexual assault or domestic violence, harassment, stalking,
I
touching, etc., etc.
obviously to make a obvious statement, I'll never be a woman. And so every now and then, like a woman will say something, and I'm like, wow, I never saw the world in that way. But just like as a man, if you're a man listening to this, think about what it must be like to know that the other sex that's around you constantly is most likely to be the individual that attacks you, harasses you, abuses you. Like that's the experience of women every day. And I know we've come back to it, but that whole bear or man conversation, like, like like having, thankfully I have female friends, and I understand why so many women chose the bear. Like, and it's like, think about that. Like, rather than arguing with it as a man, think, okay, what can I do to change the opinion, at least of the women in my life? You know, like, doesn't you can only do so much, but if women in your life are still feeling that way, like,
Yeah.
make a contribution, even if it's a small one, and try and make a change.
And that's the bit. So my cousin's boyfriend, he's he's a when he's telling us the stories, when he's kind of recounting the stories from his perspective, well, what the girls are telling us, right? He's the guy that you would want more guys to be like, because he calls the shit out, right? So he'll go and say, hey, listen, what do you mean? Why are you saying that? Like, why are you speaking to them like that's really disrespectful? Like, why would you do it? Now, obviously, in this day and age, I'm like, listen, bruh, I love that you're doing that, but my love, you need to be careful because, you don't want to get stabbed or anything. But again, to his credit, what he's doing is holding other men to account. So when even this whole thing with the manosphere, when men say, oh, you can't even approach a woman anymore. But the thing is, love, if you're constantly on a state of alert, of course you can't freaking approach women anymore, you twat, because she's already thinking like, oh god, should I wash my drink? Did he touch my drink? Did he put something in my drink? Is he going to inject me with something? Oh my god, is he talking to me? But what if I say no to him? Like, that's not a safe space to be in. So obviously women are already on alert. So obviously they're going to assume the worst about you, which is why thank God we have you, Fabian, we have people like Curtis and our other friends who haven't been on yet, so I won't name them, but they're great examples of men that hold other men to account. And that's where you create an environment where all men win and all women feel safer.
And also, just don't be a flipping loser. Like, it's like, don't, like, you can't just say it's so hard to approach women. It's like, work it out, dude, and do it in a respectful way. If you're respectful, that's gonna make you stand out. Like that, this should be making life easier for you.
Yeah.
Like, if you're a respectful,
So,
well-raised man, you
yeah.
should stand out among the crowd right now.
Yeah.
So don't complain about it.
It's so true that you say that, love, honestly, because I always think, like, is there why is it there's this sort of feeling that there's some kind of magic source here or something, but it's really not. It's saying, yeah, if you're going to approach a group of girls or two girls together, say, hey, excuse me, girls, listen, ladies, I just wanted to say hi, chat to you. I don't want to interrupt you. Would you mind if we could have a conversation? I think you're really beautiful. And then if she's like, listen, that's really kind of you, but actually I'm not interested, I'm sorry, then say, listen, no worries, have an absolutely brilliant evening, walk away.
Walk
Don't be like,
away.
oh, what do you mean? Oh, but come on, oh, you're standing here. Oh, who are you? You're looking like that. Or are you trying to tell me you don't want some attention right now? Like, guys, this is not fucking rocket science,
Yeah.
okay? Like, as Fabian says, just be kind, be respectful. And my thing always is, treat this woman as you would want your mother or your sister to have been treated in a similar situation. Apply the same level of respect. I had this debate with one of our family friends who was all like, oh, he's got a daughter. Oh, I don't know, this boyfriend, and he's coming around like, who the fuck is this guy? Then his son, he's like, oh, yeah, no, it's great. So-and-so's around and he's going to talk to so-and-so and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, bruh, do you not really just hear yourself right now? Like, this is part of the problem. Like, every girl is somebody's daughter.
Yeah.
Treat her with the same respect that you would want your daughter to be treated with. And I'm telling you, the world would be a happier, safer place
And
for
guys,
everybody.
if there's a single guy listening to this and wondering like how to approach women, like just take what Mira said, like personalize it, personalize it in your own way. But if you, like I say, if you approach a woman and say, "Hey, look, just want to have a conversation. You're beautiful," and just like do it however you want to do it, that's gonna be a winner. I promise you. Like, look, I've not been single in a long time, so maybe I'm way off. But but
You're
I
not.
feel like this would be a good place to start. Just workshop it, get it in your own voice, and come back to us. Again, leave us some comments in the comment sections. Let us know how it goes.
That's it. And I don't deny it must be intimidating, love, for sure. Particularly when you're approaching someone. Even as a woman, if you like a guy and you're thinking like, oh God, he's gonna reject me, this is gonna be so embarrassing. But the thing I feel like, and again, I'm not saying like I'm great at this, so you know, we all feel embarrassed when someone's like, no, you're okay, thanks. But I think the thing to consider is you don't really understand what that person is doing or they're going through. You don't know if she's genuinely just out with her girls because she's had a really terrible week and she just wants to decompress.
Yeah.
Women dress for other women, by the way. I don't understand why men don't realize this, but we do really dress for other women because we want to look as good as our friends. So we make an effort with our makeup and our clothes and blah, blah, blah. Um, Maybe she's just came out of a really bad relationship and she's like, listen, she's not in the right place. It's not the right time for you, right? Like maybe, unfortunately, she looked at you and thinks, actually, maybe you're not my type. In the same way, another woman may approach you and you may be like, oh no, she's not my type. Like, stop taking everything so personally. The manosphere are the biggest bunch of babies in the world. Honestly, like, if your ego is so fragile that the only way to counter that is to hate on women, attack women, subjugate women, hold them down, that is a you problem. A you problem. Figure your shit out because it's got nothing to do with women, okay? Because actually, love, I mean, you are one of my best friends. You are like a brother to me, right? Our friendship group is super mixed, right? We have an incredible mix of genders and races and ages and blah, blah, blah. I cannot imagine my life without you and the rest of our family in it, right? Because we all offer different things. As a man, you bring a very different perspective and a lived experience to the table. As a woman, we do that too. I love it. Women love men. Actually, we don't hate men. That's the craziest thing. We hate a certain type of man because we just want to feel safe.
Yeah.
That is it.
100.
Really, it's not difficult.
And this is the thing, I think, to your point, it's more of saying that it's that behavior. Like it's not what you are, it's how you're behaving. And if you make your behavior what you are, then we hate what you are. And that's I think where it gets to, and it's that confusion that happens. And yeah, look, maybe spend less time looking at Andrew Tate. I almost forgot his name. Man, imagine if I had actually forgotten his name, how good a world that would have been.
Do you know what I find funny with Andrew Tate as well? He talks like this. And I'm always like, does he have ADHD or is he on like speed or something? I can't even understand a word this guy is saying right now. Like, so there's a legion of people that are literally thinking like that. Like, bruh, this guy is not attractive. I'm telling you, I don't care how many women he pays to be in his videos to pretend that they just give him a blowjob on the, like, literally by meeting him first. Do not believe that shit for a second, mate. I'm telling you, that is not it. And actually, respectfully, imagine, like, not everyone has this, but imagine you come from a two-parent home where your parents are in a loving marriage relationship. Do you think that your dad Andrew Tated your mum? Like, do you really think that that's how he got her? Like, come on, people. Like, you guys are smarter than this. This generation is so clever. You are better than these people. Come on.
We were going to talk about the weather. I don't know if that's worth getting into.
Oh my God, bruv. We have to talk about the weather because I'm sorry. You gotta do it. Okay, listen. When I was living in America, my American friends used to laugh at me and be like, "Why do English people talk about the weather so much?" And I tried to explain to them the reason that we do this is because the weather is so changeable. Like the previous week, it was like 19 degrees and cold. Then suddenly it was like 34 degrees and you're sweating your butt cheeks off. Okay, it's horrendous here. And nothing in this country is designed, because we're designed for the cold, as one would expect. All of our houses are thick brick, heavily insulated, central heating. When you go to Australia, they have these thin ass walls. They're like plaster sheets almost, because they constantly have the heat. So they don't want to trap it in the houses. So, oh my God, bruv, it was horrendous. And we're super lucky because sorry, I'm going to slightly segue here. Privatization of the railways was horrific. we were one of the first train providers that were taken back into public ownership. And they did a post-mortem on it in The Guardian this week. And it only then made me realize we're so used to things just happening that we don't stop and think.
Hmm.
And actually, love, the train stock that they then put in post-privatization, because these were sitting somewhere, they never released them, they're all air conditioned. It is so
Interesting.
lovely. I mean, yesterday, my mum and I we went out to meet family in Soho, and on the way back, we were both like fast asleep on the train because it was so comforting. It was just like, it was so cool and relaxed, and it's big trains and space. And so, yes, sorry. So, if you're outside of London and wondering why on earth Londoners complain so much about the heat, it's because it's
Yeah,
horrendous.
so one thing I don't miss about uh not having to go into the office is like working from home means I don't have to worry about getting on a super hot train. And then you get into the office and you're sweaty and you're like, I gotta get through the day now with my shirt sticking to me and can't have a shower or whatever, and it's just a bad day, like altogether. So yeah, thankfully I get to work from home. I think it's like again super interesting that it's been so hot, and I don't know if you ever watch BBC News Watch, where
Mm-mm.
they have Samira Ahmed, and she basically goes through some of the comments and criticisms that the BBC has had around their coverage of the news. And so a few people have written in to say, oh, I hate that there's so much scaremongering about climate change and global warming. Like, there's too much of it going on. Can we not just enjoy the warm weather and the sunshine that we're getting? And it's like, guys, like, like I'm always the guy who uh, you know, we're both environmentalists, I guess, and we both like think about green issues. So whenever like someone complains about the rain, I'm like, do you realize we need rain for water to drink, to
Mm.
shower, to bathe? Like the rain is important. Okay, if
But,
we have everyday sunny, then we will live in a literal desert. And again, random thing that I saw. Apparently, there's a line. It's called, I think, the 100th medial line that runs north to south across the U.S. And on the west is essentially like it's a more arid part of the country, and on the east is more highly populated because it's a wetter part of the country, right? So think about New York and California and how different the two climates are, and then how it changes as you go inland. What they were saying is that the median line is actually going further and further to the east, and so there's less and less rainfall happening across the
mm,
US. And so everything to the east of the line has 40 millimeters or less of rainfall a year. And
Jesus.
it's like
That's crazy,
all of
man.
that is farmland. And so like think about how much like food being produced on farmland that's getting less water now. And so we're at a point where major things are happening. Like again, coming back to the UK, this is the hottest May on record. It's insane when you think about it. And the jump between what was the previous warmest to what is now the current warmest is like something like 3 degrees.
It's huge, love.
That's a huge jump in the
It's
grand scheme
huge.
of things. And so, you know, you look at other parts of the world, it's not just the UK that's suffering. There was a graph showing parts of India were experiencing close to 50 degrees of heat. Like, like
Good.
I don't know what to say. If you're still skeptical on human-driven climate change, then maybe there's no way I can convince you because at this point the evidence should be self-evident.
Because the thing is, love, like, even if you are skeptical on the natural heating of the earth versus human driven climate change, the fact is, you can see yourself that it's getting hotter. So, whether you agree with the source being one or the source being other, let's take a step back and say, look, this is getting hotter. America experiences, and not just hotter, by the way, I think that's another fallacy in this. It's the extremes. So, what it's saying is the by the Earth heating up, the extremes become more extreme. So in Texas, for example, a few years ago, they had a freezing bout of cold to the point where the electricity grid collapsed and people were dying, et cetera, et cetera. And on the flip side, obviously, California suffers greatly with more and more extreme wildfires because, to Fabian's point, it's more arid, there's less rainfall, et cetera. But the point is, there is a problem. You can see that something is wrong, whether you agree with the source of it. So then the question is, how do we solve for it? What can we do? Are there actions that we can take ourselves as human beings to try and limit the exposure, like the extremeness of it? Or are there other things that we can do to try and mitigate, even if you believe that it's natural warming? Are there things that can happen that can mitigate that? I.e., could we find other solutions to generate our energy just because we're smart enough to be able to do it? So why wouldn't we leverage like wind power and solar power, particularly in this country where we have so much of it, frankly, and even water power, right? We're an island, we're surrounded by the bloody stuff. We might as well use it, especially the very aggressive North Sea. So like, it just doesn't make any sense to me, love. And again, it's just this whole thing with, I believe X, and I will use my confirmation bias on whatever is out there that will agree to X. And that's all this is. And the fact is, you have to take a step back and question, like, who's paying you to believe X, by the way? Because the fossil fuel companies who make money hand over fist are flooding the propaganda around climate change, etc., because they simply are rich scumbags that can't be happy with the level of wealth that none of us will ever see in our lifetimes, but still want more and more and more. And then the question is, like, in 30, 40, 50 years' time, when this becomes 365 days a year of extremities, how are we going to live, bruv? Genuinely. How's that going to work?
Well, and interestingly, what might happen first, I saw an article, I think it was done by a BBC researcher, that was saying that the dust storms that were being generated were also a vector for fungus, which will spread in disease. So it might just be that Mother Nature just gets rid of us and solves the problem that way, So again,
And
why
again,
would you think about it before that?
And again, love, all of this I feel to me just goes back to the same point, which is, what are we leaving behind? You know what I mean? What are we leaving behind for the next generation after us? And there's this whole argument, obviously. So this week, the NEET stats, so young people 16 to 25 years old that were not in education, employment, or training, the figures are massive. I think it's like 1 million young people, effectively, that are not in any of those things. Now, bearing in mind, we have, not least because we have an aging population, but in terms of your own self-worth and feeling like you want to do something, earn something, have a contribution, whether you buy into the system or not, it's always nice to have to do something, even just training if you're not working. Even training is lovely, or educating yourself, whatever. But again, I feel like then the flip side debate is people arguing about the pension triple lock. And then you always get pensioners being like, oh, but I paid my whole life into the system and I refuse for you to take my money. And they're just like, love, love, love. I don't think you understand. Nobody's saying the pension's going to take away. It's just that the triple lock on the pension means that where wages are increasing by 2%, your pension is increasing by 7%. How is that sustainable? The people that are working and paying taxes today are paying your pensions. That's, I think there's a fundamental lack of how pensions actually work, to be honest, bruv, which is sort of part of the problem. But again, my point, is because the politicians are chasing the voting electorate who are largely older, over the age of 50, more so than they are younger, because we have an aging population, we are thinking in such a short-term and selfish way that the world that we're leaving behind for the younger people is just horrendous. I saw a lady the other day at one of the Reform, I think Tommy Robinson's march, saying, yeah, but I'm here because I want the world to be better for my kids. It saddens me that you think Tommy Robinson is the answer to your kids having a better life, your grandkids having a better life. That really saddens me, because I feel like you have a fundamental lack of understanding of the issues that young people are facing if you think that he and his cabal are the answer. You know what I
It's
mean?
it's nuts. Like what is the offering that is going to make your children? Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's been a good session, and it's a hard one, isn't it? So, yeah, like we always say, we really appreciate your feedback. So please feel free to let us know if you disagree with us. We're happy to have a debate about things. We're, like we always say, we're not oracles. We're not saying we have the perfect opinion. The reality is a lot of nuance does get lost on social media and in shorts and snippets. So we do really encourage you, if you've got the time, whack on the podcast on one of the streaming services, just have a listen while you're driving or while you're cooking. And if you have the ability to just listen more broadly to what we're trying to say, and see if you agree with us or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for listening. Until next week, hopefully, maybe. We're not going no more trips planned, so hopefully we'll be back next week.
Thank you.
You
Thank
guys.
you so much.
Bye.
Bye.